All right, welcome to Touchdown Talks. I'm Spencer Taylor. This is going to be my reaction to Week 6 for the NFL in 2025. We have finished those 6 weeks out. Just had the Monday night doubleheader for the week that finished just about an hour ago from when I'm recording this. This video will be coming out Tuesday when you're watching this. So, before I go into my reactions to the games from this week, please hit the like button. Hit subscribe so you don't miss out on my future content, and let me know down below, anything you'd like me to cover as far as reactions or predictions going forward throughout the season, as well as, other content, whether that's talking about a specific team, player, if you want me to talk about fantasy, want me to talk about, betting, if you want me to do power rankings or, tier lists, or you want me to react to news, gonna have some of that coming out, of course, throughout the season. Plenty of that to go, but, anything you comment in the comment sections for me, I prioritize covering content that I know you want to hear from. So if you're talking with me down in the comments, I will prioritize covering whatever it is you would like me to cover, assuming it is NFL related. So, going through the games, Thursday, I was wrong. Eagles have some massive concerns. They got blown out on the road against the Giants. Giants seem like a really good home team this year now. Now that they've got Jackson Dart starting and Cam Scatterbo going. Those two really fun rookies to watch. Of course, Cam Scatterbo, really fun and crazy to watch. Little concerned of, the way he plays, the way he is. It's a little concerning and, hard to believe that he's necessarily going to be a long-term player in the NFL that's going to last for forever, but he is also playing the running back position, and it is the NFL, not for long. So, is another thing that comes off of that. So, live it up. Obviously, for any player, you hope that they can make it past their rookie contract, make it to the bigger contracts, that come with even more money. And Scatterbo certainly has the talent and all that to do so. You just, the physical run style that he has, you hope that his body is able to take the toll that he's going to demand of his body to do that. But regardless, really talented, really fun guy to watch on the field, and they got the win. And as I said, I think this Giants team, they've shown it in the last 3 weeks. They're a team that, last 3 or 4 really, they're a team that is going to be much better at home, especially with these two rookies and a lot of other players on the team that are young. They're going to be better at home at MetLife. On the road, they might be a little bit more likely to lose a game like they did a week ago against the Saints. But at home, the last 2 weeks, they've won against the Eagles and against the Chargers. And then for the Eagles, certainly some concern, some drama for the issues they're having on offense and on defense. Certainly not as good of a defense as they had last year, but I'm not too concerned about the Eagles. They're still 4-2. They've got plenty of time to right things. You just, for the Eagles, you hope that this doesn't become a funk that they fall into and lose a bunch of games. We saw that happen a couple years ago for them. That year they were able to right the ship, and then from there they went into 2024 last year, won most of their games and did just fine after a semi-rocky start to the season, and then obviously got hot, went to the Super Bowl, and won last year. But, you hope the Eagles aren't going into the sort of the slump they had for a while there in 2023. But I think they'll be okay. Again, it's just concerning play calling type stuff, not being able to get the run game going as well as last year, and then also just the passing game not working very well for them. London game, Denver Broncos get the win against the Jets in a very painful, very low-scoring game. Very ugly game for both sides. The Jets, very lifeless, obviously, 0-6. They're, really bad start to the season. It's they've had some close games too. That is one thing. Is I will say they've played in a lot of close games, but they've also had a couple blowouts, and really even in the closer games, they've been really ugly games. And it's just the Jets are a team that doesn't feel like they've got much life to them. And really with Justin Fields, and for the Jets finished this game in London with negative net passing yards. So you on your couch on Sunday, you had more net passing yards than the Jets did. So, just really struggling on offense for the Jets. They go to 0-6. Broncos 4-2. Good record, one of the best records in the league. Certainly going to be in the race for the AFC West. However, of course, due to some other results this week, we'll see that, again, it's certainly not a foregone conclusion as to who's going to win the division. And, for the Broncos, the first 3-4 weeks may have looked like they might have been them or the Chargers could run away with it, but Chiefs not out of the question either there. So, and then Colts Cardinals. This was a one where the Colts won yet again, 5-1, tied for the best record in the league so far. Certainly one of the most impressive teams so far in 2025. And that is an interesting thing, is we've got a handful of teams this year in 2025 that are making a good case for the importance of having a quarterback who is not on a maximum top of the market contract. There are a couple quarterbacks that it is justified to pay them that much. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. I would say those would be the quarterbacks that you could maybe justify it. But, I mean, even for Lamar Jackson, for Joe Burrow, for example, as well, even those two, look what's going on with those two teams. They're struggling this year because they, you pay your quarterback so much, even if they are a top quarterback, top 3, top 5, and one of the best in league history, you pay them so much of the salary cap pie, there's less of that to go around to the other positions, and it starts to show, and it starts to affect your quarterback's health and their play and your team's play and health. And so some of the teams this year, including the Colts, there are these teams that have these reclamation quarterbacks that are kind of resurrecting their careers in the NFL, that are on cheaper deals or medium deals for quarterbacks, and their teams are doing well because they actually have good rosters around the quarterback. So this year, the Colts are one of them. They're making a case, and this is a copycat league. So, if you're somebody, especially a player, if you're somebody that's wanting the trend of quarterbacks every year getting more and more of the salary cap, this is something, some of these teams, you're going to want to root for them and hope that they do well, because the league will take notice of what things are working and what things aren't year to year. And especially teams that are trying to build, trying to draft things, change things. Teams are going to look at what is recently working for other teams. And certainly there's an argument to be made that some of these teams that are paying quarterbacks top of the line market, 50 million plus a year, those teams are starting to, even if they do have top quarterbacks, their rosters outside of the quarterback are making it difficult even for those quarterbacks and those teams to really win it all in the end. But yeah, so for this one, for the Colts, it was a close game. It was really one of the closest games for the Colts this season. And, for those like myself who bet the Colts to cover the spread, this was a pretty trappy one as far as betting the spread. I was a little nervous about that. So as far as actual money betting, for the most part, I actually just put the Colts in money line parlays. And actually, when I had bet the spread, on the Colts. It was actually much smaller than this. I bet the spread early for the Colts, like a week in advance, so it was only like 2.5, 3.5 when I bet money on it. So I actually was okay on that. But for this ESPN bet tracking, it went up to 6.5 by the time I marked my bet here. Again, these are no money here. These are just tracking predictions. So for the 6.5, the Colts were not able to cover because it was a much closer game than you might have expected. Part of it is that I do think this Cardinals defense, they've had some moments where they've let the team down, but I think this Cardinals defense is pretty good and probably the better part of the team for the Cardinals. And another thing for the Cardinals, you were missing Kyler Murray, and quite a bad game for Kyler Murray because Jacoby Brissett came in for the Cardinals and had that offense looking better than it's really looked almost all season with Kyler Murray. So I just, there's always been questions about Kyler Murray's work ethic, things like that are literally have been in his contract terminology in the past. And just the play on the field. Kyler's certainly a talented quarterback, especially in the running, but smaller quarterback, doesn't see the field the greatest. Sometimes with his running ability, makes dumb decisions, does, loop-de-loops in the backfield and, runs the risk of bad sacks or turnovers. And again, you had an old backup quarterback in Jacoby Brissett coming in who played pretty well and almost got your team to an upset victory on the road against a Colts team who has been just running over teams. So Cardinals were able to cover the spread of 6.5, but it was still a win for the Colts. Daniel Jones wasn't his best game of the season, but he still played okay, and really the star of this Colts season so far. I mean, a lot of stars to go around, really, across the roster, but really Jonathan Taylor is just playing lights out this year, and once again had another great week. So, the Colts, they keep rolling, tied for the best record in the league. Cardinals drop another game, fall to 2-4. Not too surprising here as far as this week goes, and especially if you watched my video last week adjusting my predictions for the Colts, I did expect that the Colts were going to win this game. But yeah, for the Cardinals, I thought they had a chance to maybe be a surprising team this year, at least as far as like being a wild card team. They're just the Colts the chart. Two teams that start with the same letter in the first in the name, but for the Cardinals, I don't think they've really got a chance to be that this year anymore. They just, you fall to 2-4, which isn't the worst record in the league by any chance, but it's just, you keep dropping. And that's the thing, the Cardinals have been in a good amount of close games. That's one good thing for them, but they keep finding ways to lose them. There have been plenty of games this year that they've led late into the game and then they've let the game slip away. This one was actually similar. The Chargers did have a lead at a couple points in the game, and kept it close, but just wasn't enough that they could do against a really high-powered Colts offense and team this year. Next game, Steelers hosting the Browns. This one, Steelers won, covered the spread at home as a favorite, which is pretty good and impressive. Mike Tomlin at home as a favorite, not always been the best at covering the spread, but overall and actually winning, pretty decent, of course. And Steelers 4-1. I certainly didn't give them enough credit going into the season. They are one of those teams that I'm going to wait till the mid-season, but I'm probably going to be upping my predictions for their win totals going throughout the second half of the season. But we'll have to see again. I'm going to wait till the mid-season to actually do that, but I think the main thing is to an extent you could say maybe I underestimated the Steelers, but I think also part of it is, massively overestimated the rest of the AFC North this year, and even really the AFC in general. A lot of the top teams in the AFC are struggling a little bit more than many would have expected so far this year, and so that's helped a little bit for the Steelers. But I mean, to the credit of Mike Tomlin, Aaron Rodgers, I mean, Rodgers went from the last 2 years with the Jets, absolute train wreck. I mean, Jets really struggling this year, and Rodgers coming here to the Steelers and doing as good as he's doing. Another one of those where it's has nothing to do with the Jets really so far this year, but the way Aaron is playing is just another bad mark on them as a franchise. The fact that you brought in Aaron Rodgers, and look at the opportunity you squandered. You had Aaron Rodgers looking completely washed, completely out of it, completely, mediocre at best last year. And of course injured in 2023. And now he goes to the Steelers, who, sure, they're a much better franchise, and we know that, but again, it's a franchise that's been kind of middling in recent years, and certainly on offense, the Steelers have been pretty inept since Ben Roethlisberger left. So, for how good they're looking, now the defense is still probably the star of the Steelers, but pretty balanced as far as how good they're doing. And yeah, they've got the offense playing well. They've got Aaron Rodgers, who, he shows signs of age. He certainly doesn't move as well as he used to, but he still makes crazy plays in the passing game, throwing across the field, doing certain things that most quarterbacks could not get away with. But Aaron Rodgers is one of those guys that's very smart, pre-snap and post-snap, very smart. He'll make you pay if you're lax on anything on defense. And again, he's on the wrong side of 40, but again, compared to how he looked the last 2 seasons, he's looking great. So Steelers up to 4-1, and just with the way the rest of the AFC North is, it's pretty hard to see the Steelers not winning that division at the moment. So, they do have some tougher games coming up this season. Obviously, that's the thing. This game, the score was pretty lopsided, but for a while it was a pretty low-scoring game, pretty low, close-scoring game for a minute there. But, of course, Browns just traded away Joe Flacco. Of course, he hadn't been doing all that great, but now with Gabriel playing his first start, bad spot for a rookie quarterback making his second start in the league, going up against Mike Tomlin, who always crushes rookie quarterbacks that he's going against. And so, tough spot there, but obviously the Browns are the Browns. They're in quarterback hell right now. They're 1-5. They're struggling all around. They're paying 8 quarterbacks on their payroll. Only 3 of them are on the 3 are on the active roster. 4 technically on the team if you include Deshaun Watson. So, Browns are sad story like usual. And then the next game, this was one I was completely off on. The Carolina Panthers winning at home, upsetting the Dallas Cowboys. Of course, the main headline and story of this game is Rico Dowdle, who had previously been with the Cowboys. They let him walk out the door and go to Carolina, and he was not quiet about even leading up to the game, about the fact that this was a revenge game for him. Some players might shy away from that, might try to downplay things, but he was not downplaying things at all. Had been saying before the game, hey, they better come ready, they better buckle up, and he torched the Cowboys to the tune of 30 points to 27. And, Carolina, they're another team that looks a lot better when they're playing at home. So when the Cardinals are playing at home, they've shut out the Falcons this year. They've obviously just beat the Cowboys, who do have the worst, if not one of the worst defenses in the league. So that played part of this. But, Cowboys do still have a good offense, and they made some good plays, especially between Dak Prescott and George Pickens. I mean, what a good acquisition by the Cowboys there to get Pickens. He's looking really great. He's had some, odd moments with some small fights and things like that, but really hasn't gotten into much trouble yet this season. And he's been playing probably some of his best ball at wide receiver, better than he ever was playing for the Steelers. Of course, he's got a much better quarterback than he's had any time in his NFL career. Prescott, really a great quarterback. He's showing that this year, and the Cowboys aren't necessarily putting up the wins to support it, but again, it's off of really a terrible defense. 2-3-1, and for the Cardinals, you go to 3-3. The Cardinals, they're playing scrappy this year. They are certainly not near as bad as they have been in the last 2-3 years. Of being like a bottom 3 team every year. They are better than that this year. Bryce Young, I still don't know that he's a great NFL quarterback, but he's shown enough flashes at the end of 2024 and enough so far this season that I think he's going to get, unless things just fall off the rails for the Panthers and for Bryce Young, I think there's a chance that they give him a chance in year 3 even. For Bryce, he is a smaller quarterback. That is one thing that's going for him, is he's really small for the NFL, which, does show itself at times for small quarterbacks, including Bryce Young. Sometimes it can be a little bit harder for him to literally see the field over offensive linemen and defensive linemen, but, again, credit to the Panthers. They got the upset win. Very fun one for Panthers fans in Carolina, against a very high-powered offense in the Cowboys. Next, Seahawks at the Jaguars. This is one that was really interesting in the sense that on ESPN here, you'll see that the Seahawks were listed as -1.5, but actually this line flipped multiple times during the week leading up to it. And especially after the Jaguars win against the Chiefs on Monday night in Week 5, for the most part in the week, it actually flipped in favor of the Jaguars, with them being favored. And even at times where it was in favor of the Seahawks, there were a lot of people, including sharp bettors, that were talking about betting the Jaguars, just because of the fact that they had just beat the Chiefs at home, and the fact that the Seahawks were now going to have to come across country to Florida all the way from Seattle, which, about as far of a flight as you can have in the NFL, and certainly about as far of a flight as you can have within the continental United States. So, for the Seahawks, I wasn't surprised, though. Whether it was -1.5, +1.5, I believed they were going to come in here. It was a pretty good letdown spot. Again, Jaguars, yes, they did have a great win against the Chiefs at home, but that is also kind of a classic letdown spot. You're on shorter rest than your opponent. Sure, you're at home, but you're on shorter rest. You're just coming off of a really exhilarating win against a good team, whereas your opponent is coming off of a disappointing close loss against a good team. So they're going to come in angry, wanting a win, and that's what happened here. The Seahawks got the win and, for the most part, controlled the game. And also a contributor was the Jags had plenty of mistakes. Trevor Lawrence, even in the win against the Chiefs, they had plenty of moments that the operation wasn't good, even before the snap. Some of that stuff was, again, present, and mistakes being made by the Jaguars, and the Seahawks were able to capitalize it. They've got, under McDonald, they've got a really good defense, and Sam Darnold and that offense with JSN as a new young wide receiver that is popping off, especially for fantasy, they're looking really good. And the Seahawks are one of those other teams, like I mentioned with the Colts. The Colts Seahawks, and Buccaneers. Those are the three teams I was referring to earlier. Teams that have quarterbacks that most of the league had given up on, at least in the last couple of years, who are currently on very low, small contracts, or at least medium-sized contracts for quarterbacks. These three quarterbacks, they're looking the best they ever have in their career. They've been in the league long enough to where they're not rookies anymore. They've seen it. They've been on multiple teams, been with multiple staffs. They're now with coaching staffs that we at least believe to be good, if not on offense, just good in general. And Seahawks, like the Colts, another team that they're 4-2, one of the best records in the league. They've also looked like one of the best teams in the league. Have had a challenging schedule as well. For the Seahawks, they're 4-2. They're in really good position within their division to be in the race to win it. If not, be primed to make a wild card race as well. Going to the next team in the AFC West, that is the same record, the Rams at 4-2. They got a dominant win over the Ravens. Not a big surprise there. I'm not going to cover this one much here. Rams, at least here on ESPN, had been favored by 7.5 by the point when I selected this. Again, not a very surprising win here. The Ravens have been just lifeless without Lamar Jackson. And of course, they were struggling even with Lamar Jackson. They fall to 1-5, which is atrocious for a team that is led by John Harbaugh, Lamar Jackson, and Derrick Henry as your running back. Now, and again, Lamar Jackson has been hurt the last few weeks. Derrick Henry has had fumbling issues, especially earlier this season, that first 3 weeks, I believe it was. And also, this last couple weeks, the Rams have become one of the more injury-depleted teams this season. But at the same time, though, we have teams like the Buccaneers with Baker Mayfield who have been able to get around that. Ton of injuries, and they're still finding ways to win. So, to some extent, the key injuries thing, it does matter. But sometimes it's like, well, it is still to an extent. It is an excuse, whether it's valid or not. But again, there are teams that manage to overcome it somehow. Again, I'm not saying it hasn't been hard for the Ravens. I also am not saying that I think they're totally out of it for the playoffs, but pretty close at this point. 1-5 is a huge hole to dig out of. Even if you win every single game the rest of the season, well, if you do that, you're going 12-5. You're making the playoffs, maybe still win your division, but to go 12-5, you'd have to win the next 11 games straight. The Ravens have a tough schedule. Again, Lamar's been out. I still don't know if he's going to be able to come back for the Ravens next game. They do have a bye, actually. I believe they have a bye this week. It's either week 7 or week 8. I'm forgetting, but the Ravens do have a bye coming up, so that is going to help them. But that is going to help the Ravens. But, for being 1-5, I don't know that it's going to be enough, really, to get them. Certainly 12-5 is not going to happen. But, to get into the playoff as a wild card team, you're going to need at least 9 wins, which is still certainly doable. But you still got to scrap together 8 more wins. That means you only can afford to lose 3 more games if you're going to go 9-8. So even just that, getting to 9-8 and only losing 3 more games would be pretty impressive at this point. So it's going to be tough to even make the playoffs at this point for the Ravens. It's very close to being a lost season, and especially with how dead they've looked the last 2 weeks, getting stomped by the Rams and getting stomped the previous week. It's tough to see the Ravens really climbing out of this hole. And for the Rams, good week. bad part of it was injury to Puka Nacua late in the game. The good news is it came back that the leg injury was certainly not the worst of leg injuries. He should be back soon. As of right now, I'm not certain the status for him this upcoming week in Week 7. The Rams are headed to London, so they'll have an international game. I'm not sure if Puka is going to be available or even making the trip with the team, but I do suspect, based off what I've heard, he should be back for the Rams relatively soon, which is a good thing. And Rams looked okay. They dropped that recent game to the 49ers, but I'm not too concerned about that one. It's a division win. It was a scrappy game. But 4-2, you're up there at the top of your division with the Seahawks with a chance to compete. Going on the road to London could be interesting, but I believe the Rams are going to be favored, and for the most part, favorites do really well internationally. So I'm sure the Rams will be looking at a good Week 7, but we'll get to that in a future video. To the other LA team, we have the LA Chargers. This one, they did not cover the spread on the road. This was not -4.5. This was not a spread that I put any money on. I don't think I really put any money on this game in general, actually. I may have had the Chargers included in a money line parlay. And they made me sweat it out, if that was the case. I can't remember. I was not too confident on this game. The thing is, the Chargers, they are 4-2. They've looked like a good team, but they dropped the game recently against the Giants on the road, and they've just been racking up injuries, unfortunately, and it's really shown effect on the team. They were able to scrap out a win in Miami, but that's against a team in Miami who is very lifeless, like a bottom 5, bottom 3 team so far this season. Before the season, if I had to guess, their coach would have been number 1 or 2 on my list as far as coaches I thought that were going to be fired. Not going to be the first coach to be fired, as we've already had another coach get fired. But, for the Chargers, the injuries are the concern, but they were able to scrap out a win on the road, cross-country, so, that's at least a good thing for them. For the Dolphins, they just looked lifeless. Tua, of course, is making headlines for what he said in the post-game press conference, where he accused teammates of being late or not showing up to players-only meetings, and he was saying this in the sense of leadership needs to get better. We have a leadership issue. Players are not showing up or are showing up late to players-only meetings, and the odd thing about him saying that, and the obvious criticism is, well, wait a minute, Tua, you're a team captain, you're the starting quarterback, you're the highest paid player on the team. Leadership, that's your job. Outside of the head coach, you're really next, and especially being that your head coach is on the hot seat and is not known to be a high-level aggressive coach. He's more on the nicer side, more on the nerdy offensive coordinator type side. As a leader, that's your job. If people are showing up late or not showing up to meetings at all, and especially player meetings, you as the starting quarterback and a captain on the team, that's your job. So you saying that in the press conference, that's an indictment on yourself. So I don't know. Tua is one of those quarterbacks that needs help with his press conferences. Publicist, whatever, somebody on the Dolphins PR team, somebody needs to give him some tips on, hey, maybe don't bring that up. Work on your responses in the press conference. Of course, I'd be more concerned about your performance on the field. Tua, not seeing the field well, tons of turnovers and bad plays this year. I think the Dolphins have a massive quarterback problem. Obviously, it's very likely they move on from the head coach and make a switch there, quite possibly mid-season. But the real problem for the Dolphins, in my opinion, is the quarterback. And the reason it's more of a problem is the fact that based off the contract, you're stuck with him really this year, and most likely stuck with him even in 2026. If anything, maybe you draft a quarterback and bring them in to have them sit behind Tua and replace him next year. But based off the contract you gave him, Dolphins are kind of stuck with Tua, and he really is one of the problems for the Dolphins right now. He is not the solution, and certainly not with the press conferences. He's not helping himself or the team out. Next game that happened to react to, Patriots and the Saints. This one was, I had bet the Saints here to cover the spread. They were at home. This is a Saints team that, yes, they're 1-5, but they've looked a lot more competitive than most sort of expected this season, and especially at home. They've played teams really good. And for the Patriots, this felt like a trap game, at least when it comes to the spread. Whether you thought they were going to win or not, that could be a different story. But for me, I kind of figured this might be a field goal game or less. Patriots win by 3 points, 2 points, something like that. I figured this was going to be a semi-low scoring game, bit of an odd score, which it was, 25-19, not the most common score in football. But, the Patriots were able to control the game for the most part. Drake May looked really good. He's had a really good season. And as a matter of fact, he's in the conversation for MVP this season. He's certainly not at the top of the conversation right now, but he's up there. And of the quarterbacks from the Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels class, Drake May has had a really good year. And from that class, he's been one of the more impressive of that group. So good for the Patriots. They go up to 4-2. And with the recent struggles of the Bills, you're currently sitting tied at the top of the division. So pretty interesting there. Next game up, this is the game that got the first NFL head coach of 2025 to be fired, that being Brian Callahan for the Tennessee Titans. It was announced on Monday, day following the game, that the Titans had relieved him of his head coaching duties. He finished his head coaching tenure with the Titans with an overall record of 4-19, so not a good stint there with the Titans. They've been a bottom 3 team in that time span, and just especially this season and during his time as the head coach, Titans have had just way too many times in game after game where they've mismanaged things, from the clock to, bad penalties to just bad play calling and playmaking decisions. And so, yeah, the Titans make a move very early on in the season. The danger with firing a coach mid-season, especially this early on, is that you bring it, obviously you have to promote somebody as the interim head coach. And, the thing that can happen that we've seen many times is interim head coach comes in, players want that coach to look good, so they play their asses off, they play well, and that team maybe gets a bump for at least a few weeks, maybe even gets some upset wins here or there, or at least plays closer, plays with a little bit more life than they had been in previous weeks. And the danger with that is that then you get a chance where at the end of the season, especially on some of these franchises that are a bit more dysfunctional, you end up with situations where the players start advocating for, hey, we should just hire that interim head coach and just let them keep the head coach job. And we've seen with recent scenarios, like with the Raiders, with Antonio Pierce. They did that. They listened to the players, especially their star players that were advocating for it, and that didn't work out at all. And again, it's not just the Raiders that have done that in recent years. That's just the example I'm going to give. It didn't work out for the Raiders. I don't know what's going to happen for the Titans this season under their interim head coach, but it is possible they could upset some teams here in the next few weeks. At least have some kind of a bump, some change in vibes, that kind of thing. But if you're a Titans fan, what you hope is that this gives the Titans a leg up, a head start on the coaching search a little bit to scout possible candidates out. So then come January, they can go out and hire the best possible candidate for them. Bring in a guy, preferably somebody offensive minded that can come in, help build Cam Ward, help him regain confidence, help him grow as an NFL quarterback. And then that way you don't fall into the common cycle that these dysfunctional teams have of fire GM, hire head coach, draft a quarterback, fire head coach, then fire GM, and then repeat the cycle. There's a lot of these teams, including the Bears, who have done this a lot in the last decade and a half, or at least in my lifetime. There are a lot of these dysfunctional franchises that have done that kind of a pattern over and over and over and over again, and they never seem to manage to sync up the hiring of a coach, a GM, and bringing in a quarterback. And so it's just a cyclical blame game each year of when things don't work. One of those key parts of building a team gets shipped off, and it's a spiral that just kind of keeps eating itself and never really gets much better. But yeah, so really this game though, Raiders do finally get themselves a win, but Geno Smith still had some horrible plays, some more turnovers. He leads the league in turnovers, or at least in interceptions, but pretty sure that turnovers as well there. Certainly a problem for them, but the Raiders defense played lights out at home against another very lifeless team, so they were able to get the win in Vegas. 49ers at the Buccaneers. This was one that, as you'll see, I and many thought there was a chance this could be a close game, surprising one. As far as actually betting this game, I had bet the Buccaneers to win, and I had some prop bets on Buccaneers players. I don't think I actually ended up betting the spread on this game. Kind of wish I had, because I probably would have actually bet money on this. Because that's the thing, when I place my bets and when I make these picks here on ESPN, there's sometimes a few days off. So that's one thing that can add a little discrepancy on what I'm actually betting and what I'm putting down as my predictions on ESPN. But, generally matches here. But again, with the spreads, especially with the way that the spreads may flip day to day and from book to book, this line, not exactly one that I bet, but yeah, for the Buccaneers, they dominated the game. This one was one, and the argument for the 49ers covering was, of course, that they had recently just played so well and upset the Rams on the road with Mac Jones, who had come in and looked amazing, very surprisingly good. But, this week that didn't really work out. Of course, you're on the road across country in Tampa Bay, which is part of it. But Mac Jones didn't look that great this week. Looked a little bit more like his old self. But a lot of it wasn't necessarily on Mac Jones, though. I mean, he played well for the fact that he was dealing with injuries from previous weeks. Of course, he's a 49er, so dealing with a lot of injuries. 49ers, of course, most battered up team this season, and really in the last 5 years, they've had the worst injury luck of anyone in the league, which doesn't seem to be stopping. And so yeah, they drop this game, but for the 49ers, it is pretty impressive with their injuries that they're at 4-2. Now, part of it is that they do have a weaker schedule, and they have had some lesser opponents, and that is one thing that is still going for them throughout this season, is they do have a lot of weaker opponents that, at least, when we say weaker opponents, that means their strength of the schedule is weak based off of their opponents' win percentages in the previous season. So, obviously strength of the schedule doesn't mean everything. Teams change, and we've seen that with some of these matchups. But for the Niners, they're at 4-2. They do have themselves in good position. That AFC division, NFC West race, very interesting. 3 teams tied at 4-2 at the moment at the top, and then Cardinals at 2-4. But that's an interesting race. Certainly my favorite of those 3 at the moment would be the Seahawks, followed closely by the Rams, and then 49ers would be the one I'm least confident in of those 3 to win the division. But the 49ers theoretically have the most favorable schedule. It's just the injuries, man. They are killing the 49ers, and they also don't really have the best quarterback situation out of their division. So before I move on, of course, to the Buccaneers, also huge credit to them. I don't want to make this game all about the 49ers losing. Buccaneers look insane, and as I've said, like the Colts and with the Colts and the Seahawks, a team that is doing really well with a quarterback that has resurrected his career. And of all the quarterbacks that I've talked about, with Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield is by far the poster boy for these quarterbacks who are in the primes of their career, that have resurrected their career after basically the whole league, fans and otherwise, had pretty much given up on them. Baker is playing lights out. He looks like a completely different player than what he did in his early years with the Browns. He kind of laughs at the narrative of, he has moxie now, whereas he was overconfident in the past. And, his kind of response is, that's just the media reacting to us winning versus me losing, which to some extent is true. Winning versus losing can change narratives around players and teams a lot, sometimes unfairly. But I think it is fair to say, too, for Baker that, he's still confident, which he was confident when he was with the Browns and when he was new. The difference is, though, you can have a lot of confidence. It's just that when you're not backing it up, it does come off as unwarranted, cocky, and there were things like he was doing a lot more commercials. He was doing he's still doing commercials, which is fine, but he's been in the league long enough now where he's obviously learned NFL offenses, NFL speed. He's up to speed on that kind of stuff. And so it's a little bit more okay for him to, he's got the wins, and he's got the ability to not only just win, but win comeback fashion week after week. And so you can be confident because you're able to actually back it up now. It's when you're being overly confident and then you're not backing it up and you're playing poorly on the field where that looks not so great. So, and he has to some extent. Like, he used to love going to war with the media. He's toned that back a bit. He's a lot better at that. And so, but on the field though, Baker, and as I mentioned, the injury stuff for some teams, 49ers especially, the Ravens, it is a legit thing. It can derail your season in the NFL, but the Buccaneers are a team that, with Baker Mayfield, they are showing that you can have injuries and still overcome them. It can be really hard, but the Buccaneers are doing it. I mean, they're without, basically across their offense, from running back to most of the spots on the offensive line to their wide receivers, the missing Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. They've got Emeka Ibuka, who's been popping off as a rookie. They've got some other young receivers who have been showing up. The running game's still been good. The offensive line has been playing well. But throughout all of it, even when those positions have been not playing the greatest, it's Baker Mayfield. He's making plays on the ground, through the air. He hasn't been perfect, certainly, but he's led a lot of game-winning drives for the Buccaneers this season, setting them up either for field goals or getting them into the end zone. Baker is like at the top of the MVP discussion so far this season. I know it's early on in the year, things can change, and he said as much. That is one of the things. Again, he has changed as much as he may not think he has. As far as personality-wise, he's gotten better even at things like press conferences where, he was asked this week about, hey, how does it feel to know that you're at the top of the conversation for MVP this year? And he kind of brushed it off and talked about like, hey, that's great, feels good, but it's early on in the season. We've got a lot more to do, and I'm here to win. I'm not concerned about where I'm at in the MVP race. I'm here to win. Again, feels great, but a lot of things can change by then, so I can't get complacent. He's just got way more of a personality that comes off as, confident but not overly confident, and reasonable with the fact that, hey, this is the NFL. You can lose any week. Anything can happen. You don't want to get overly confident, get lazy and complacent, because if you do, you're going to start losing games. Bad things are going to happen. Packers hosting the Bengals. Packers won it, but they made it a lot closer than it had to be. They were favored by a ton, 14.5. However, in the last 3 games, the Packers have struggled to cover the spread. They've been favored 3 weeks in a row against the Browns, the Cowboys, and the Bengals. All 3 of them, they did not cover the spread and, lost one, tied in one of them. And this game, they did win against the Bengals, but, for a Bengals team that was being led by Joe Flacco, who just got there like 6 days before the game kicked off from Cleveland after being traded, to allow the Bengals to make this game that close in Lambeau Field, pretty, a little bit concerning there. But, they did still get the win. I think for the Packers, you've had enough inconsistency on offense that's a little bit, you hope that gets worked out. And then also on defense, we after week 1 against the Lions and how the Packers looked, we thought this was like top defense in the NFL. It's not really looked quite that good in the last few weeks. It still looked good, but they've also been playing against some weaker opponents in the Bengals and the Browns, and they still allowed them to win in the end. So whether that's inconsistencies or mistakes on offense, and then also some parts of their defense that may not be as strong as we thought, but still 3-1-1. They're, for that record, they're still a pretty good team, certainly in the race in the NFC North. And then Sunday night, we had the Chiefs hosting the Lions. This one was one where the Chiefs were being favored either 1.5 to 2.5. Of course, betting public, vast majority, as you can see here on ESPN, 73% were betting for the Lions to cover the spread. And of course, even for winning outright, 74% picked them to win it. I picked the Chiefs to win and cover, which I was correct on. It's just Chiefs at home, short favorites. They just lost in a heartbreaking game to another decent team the previous week. This was just a spot that, again, for me, I can't beat it. I can't bet against the Chiefs, Andy Reid and Mahomes. I cannot bet against them as short favorites at home, especially after just barely coming off of of a loss like they had against Jacksonville. And also just desperate to get their season going. And we've seen it the last two weeks, or really the last 2 or 3 weeks. Again, even though they lost the one to the Jags, by the point where the Chiefs were playing the Giants a few weeks ago, it felt like that, if the Giants had just held on to that game and beat the Chiefs in MetLife, I think we could be at a different place with the Chiefs. First of all, at max they'd only be 2-4, and second of all, I don't know, maybe they would have gone into a tailspin a little bit more. Maybe not. I mean, it is still Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, but had the Chiefs not been able to come back and win that game against the Giants, there would be a lot more concern narratively outside the building, and for the Chiefs. For the league, for the Giants not being able to beat them, and the other games they've been able to win, kind of unfortunate because it feels like you lost your chance. I'm not saying that the Chiefs have solved every issue, but this upcoming week they get Rashee Rice back. They've had Xavier Worthy come back this past couple weeks. That's definitely helped their offense. And now you're going to get Rashee Rice back off of his 6-game suspension. So you're finally going to have Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy and Travis Kelce and, basically all their starters on offense back healthy and, defense staying semi-good and healthy. Probably one of the better parts of this Chiefs team is the defense with Steve Spagnuolo calling the plays on defense. So, held a high-powered Lions offense to 17 points. Chiefs got a convincing win at home. For the Lions, I'm not overly concerned about this game for them. It was on the road for them. The Lions do feel like a much better team at home when they're indoors on turf. That definitely favors their quarterback in Jared Goff. And, another thing with Goff that is a little bit unfortunate for the Lions is that if you do, if an opponent is able to slow down that run game of the Lions, which is very hard to do, most defenses aren't able to do it, is the key thing. But for defenses like this Chiefs defense that are able to shut down your run game, if you shut down the run game of the Lions, part of that is getting out to a lead. If you're able to get out to a lead over the Lions, Jared Goff and that offense start to struggle a little bit more because Jared Goff, not a very mobile quarterback. So if you've got a lead, you can start having your front seven of your defense start rushing the quarterback a bit more, start blitzing a little bit more, and Goff, with his lack of mobility, can be susceptible to that. And that's where, for any quarterback, you start getting more pressure on a quarterback. For the most part, they're going to start performing worse. And especially for a quarterback like Goff, who is one of the last in the league that is a true pocket passer, not much of a runner at all, that can be a struggle point for him if you're late in the game and the running game's not doing well, and the pass rush is able to start, pinning their ears back and coming after you. They struggle, and we saw that for the Lions. Part of it also was some injury concerns, but the Lions, the injury stuff, not that much of a valid excuse in my opinion. They're certainly not like 49ers, Ravens. They're not that banged up as a team. But yeah, this one, again, I'm not too concerned if you're a Lions fan. They're certainly still very much one of the best teams in the NFC, in pole position for winning the division, winning the conference even possibly. And now to the Monday Night Football doubleheader, starting with the Falcons hosting the Buffalo Bills. This is one that I had the bet on the spread correctly, with the Falcons covering the spread. but I was wrong in that I thought this was going to be a close game where the Bills would find a way to win it. Unfortunate for the Bills, they were not able to. They dropped their second game in a row, and for the Bills, at 4-2, I wouldn't be too concerned. Obviously, the Bills are certainly going to be in the race for playoffs, that kind of thing. They're still in pole position to win their division at the moment, but the last couple weeks, and even in the games that they won, the defense for the Bills is not playing up to their standard, and then even on offense, they're like we've all been saying for many years now, they're super Josh Allen reliant. And so if he's making mistakes, which he did make a couple tonight, if Josh Allen is making mistakes, the Bills are in trouble. And their defense is not stopping people. Certainly not to the level that you'd expect from a defense that is led by a defensive head coach in Sean McDermott. So they are just not playing up to standard for what you'd expect on defense. And for the Falcons, they're a really weird team to get a vibe on. They've had some really horrible games, like the one against Carolina where they got shut out. And then they've had some other games against top teams where they've looked really good, including against the Bills where they won tonight. It was at home. That helps, I'm sure, a little bit. But again, home field advantage in the NFL, not always as big of a deal as it might be in college or the NFL, or college or in high school, just simply based off the fact that these are professional athletes, professional coaching staffs. They're a little bit more well equipped to handle playing well on the road. But for the Falcons, they get a good win. They go to 3-2, and the Bills fall to 4-2. Both good records. Certainly both two teams that are well and alive for the playoffs. Of course, the Falcons just really hard to get a read on week to week, and then the Bills, again, they've got Josh Allen, so they're always going to have a chance with him. But some concerns there for the Bills. And then the final game, the Chicago Bears getting an upset win on the road against the Washington Commanders in Landover, Maryland. The Bears get the win 25-24. Some really interesting, odd facts for you here for this game. So the Bears have won 3 straight games. The last time they did that was weeks 4 through 6 in 2024. The final game of those being against the Jaguars last year. And then the following game they had was against the Commanders, where they lost in the Hail Mary game. And then from there, the Bears lost every game up until the very final game of the season in 2024. But so 2025, under Ben Johnson, Bears have won 3 games straight. And also, the Bears have won 2 games on the road. The last time they won 2 games on the road was 2023. So that's, only a couple years ago, but Bears haven't won more than 3 games on the road since 2021. And I think that's something they have a chance to do again. Win more than 2 road games in a season, which I know is a low-sounding bar, but the Bears have been really bad on the road in recent years, especially under Matt Eberflus, but even before that, not that great on the road in previous years. And so, the Bears, at least so far this season, they've looked a little better on the road than they have. And then the Bears are a top defense as far as turnovers. The Bears defense struggles a bit against the run, but they did give up some explosives to the Commanders, but the Bears, where they really shine on defense so far this season, is takeaways. They are currently ranked 2nd in the league with takeaways with 12. 11 of those takeaways coming in the last 3 games that they've played. And if you think about it, when you actually break it down, their turnovers per game, the Bears are actually first in the league. And so, Bears defense, not perfect, certainly not the best defense in the league overall. Again, they struggle against the run, and they're a bit depleted in the secondary. And again, that front seven, part of why they're not that great against the run is just they've got some spots in the front seven, especially the defensive line, that could use some improvement in future off seasons. But against the Commanders team tonight on the road, in rainy conditions in the second half, that kind of favors Bears football. That's the thing. The end of this game felt very classic Bears. Defense playing lights out, getting many turnovers, giving the offense more opportunities than deserved. The offense, at times, not really being able to capitalize on those turnovers as much as you'd like. But the rain comes in. That starts helping the other team make extra mistakes, and the Bears win in a very close game with an awkward score of 25-24. And yeah, again, second game in a row, oddly, that the Bears won by this exact same score. Of course, they had their bye week in week 5, but in week 4, when they played against the Raiders, also on the road, the Bears won 25-24. And that one, they won off of a blocked field goal. This week, they won off a walk-off field goal kicked by Jake Moody, which that's another thing. I've got to thank 49ers. Thank you for dropping Jake Moody earlier this season. Of course, that was partially deserved on his part. He had, really struggled to begin this season, didn't do well, and so the 49ers cut him. And oddly enough, the Bears and 49ers have sort of done a kicking swap this year, in the sense that, again, the Bears picked up Jake Moody and had him play tonight because of Cairo Santos being injured, wasn't able to go. So that's why Jake Moody got the start tonight. It wasn't necessarily that Cairo Santos is getting cut or anything like that. Cairo Santos was hurt, has been playing not perfect at kicker, but Cairo Santos has been one of the better kickers in Bears history. The reason he wasn't playing tonight was just because of the fact that he was injured. But the Bears did sign Jake Moody to their practice squad a couple weeks ago, pretty quickly after the 49ers dropped him. And the reason I say the 49ers and Bears did a kicker swap is because the 49ers kicker now is Eddie Pinheiro, who had been with the Bears before they had Cairo Santos when they got him a couple years ago. Eddie Pinheiro had been with the Panthers for a bit in there. But yeah, it's just kind of funny for me as a Bears fan seeing Jake Moody play for the Bears today when he was just playing for the Niners a few weeks ago, and Eddie Pinheiro playing for the 49ers currently, who was a Bears kicker a few years ago. And also, the Bears and 49ers have even further kicker history in that the Bears used to have Robbie Gould, who was really the Bears kicker pretty much for me growing up as a kid and as a teenager. That was the Bears kicker. Really great kicker, and then they let him go, and he went to the 49ers for a few years. And one last little bit of talk for this game for the Bears against the Commanders is wanted to highlight Caleb Williams. As I mentioned, the Bears offense didn't play perfect. And for the Bears, again, they really stayed in this game again because of the defense, creating turnovers and giving the offense more opportunities on short field situations. The Bears still struggling a little bit more than you'd like with some things on offense, struggling to get some of their playmakers involved, especially with DJ Moore. Just haven't really been able to get him productive and involved consistently enough. But for Caleb Williams, to his credit, he's playing really well. Not perfect, and part of the Bears' issues on offense and things like that are still because of him, and still with him being a young quarterback that is very much in the early stages of a heavy learning curve in this complicated offense under the new head coach in Ben Johnson, but you can really see it if you go back and watch all the Bears games so far this season, including this one tonight. Even though the offense didn't play perfect, they're showing slow and steady progression. One thing that they were able to do better tonight was the run game. Part of that also is on the offensive line. It's hard to deny this week and the game against the Raiders. The offensive line has, especially in the run game, looked a lot better. They've been opening a lot more holes and a lot more opportunities for DeAndre Swift, which is nice to see. DeAndre Swift hasn't had the best couple years with the Bears so far. Kind of disappointing, to be honest. But honestly, that's not all on DeAndre Swift. A lot of that has been on the offensive line, really not consistently giving him great holes to run through. He's often been dealing with, getting met at the line or even before getting to the line of scrimmage. And a lot of the run plays that he has been given this last couple of years have just been a fight to even get back to the line of scrimmage. So, so credit to the offensive line for starting to really gel. Again, part of that is the interior of the offensive line that the Bears spent a lot to improve, getting some veteran guys in there. Darnell Wright is playing at right tackle, young tackle in the NFL, and he's looking pretty good, which is awesome. He was a first-round pick in 2023 by the Bears, and he seems to be working out. And to the credit of Theo Benedict at left tackle, playing the last couple weeks, he's looked pretty good. Not perfect. He had a penalty tonight that was a bit costly that came against him, but it was a little bit ticky-tack. He was lined up a little bit too far back. They want the tackles, their helmet is supposed to line up past the belt or waistline of the center. He was very borderline. It was very close. Generally, the referees are going to call that pretty conservatively. They're not always going to throw the flag on that kind of thing. Usually they'll give linemen a warning before they actually throw the flag. And Troy Aikman and Joe Buck did a good job of covering this and said, hey, who knows? Maybe they already gave him a warning and we just don't know, and that's why they flagged it. But the time they flagged it, it was pretty borderline, so it was interesting that they called it, but it was he was far back enough. It was a fair penalty. But there was that penalty that cost them. There were a couple special teams penalties that cost them. Again, some of these mistakes for the Bears, a little too common for them. And again, the offense just does struggle to get into a rhythm. They have some drives that are great, especially early on in the game. When they're on script, they usually do well. And then, they have 2 or 3 drives a game where they put it together, which sometimes in the NFL is about all you need, and especially with a Bears defense that is giving you short fields, that can be enough. But really, if you want to be winning good games and you want to be a competitor that gets into the playoffs, you're going to have to be better than that on offense for the Bears. So, but to Caleb Williams' credit, he's playing good. Again, as I said, he's still learning. He's not playing perfect. But so far this season, Caleb Williams has 927 passing yards, 8 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions through 5 games played. That puts Caleb Williams on pace to, if he just keeps up that average production. At that pace, Caleb Williams would finish 2025 with 3,941 yards passing, 27 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. And for the Bears, single-season passing records at quarterback, those would be top 5 in all those categories. And passing yards, 3,941, that would be a record. For single-season Bears passing, that would be a record. Again, people talk about the 4,000-yard passing line, that the Bears have never had a passer get over 4,000 yards in a single season. So Caleb's not on track to even beat that this year. But even with that being the case, if he just keeps up the average of what he's doing so far, he won't break that 4,000-yard mark, but he'll still set a Bears record for single-season passing yards. So, and he's doing that while passing for close to within the top 5 in touchdowns for Bears quarterbacks, and very low on passing interceptions. Because, if you look up these single-season records for the Bears, a lot of them are Jay Cutler, for example. And yeah, he had some years that were pretty high, pretty decent in yardage, and a couple of them pretty decent in touchdown numbers as well. But like with Jay Cutler and a lot of the other Bears quarterbacks that are top of those single season lists, a lot more interceptions than what Caleb is throwing. So, of course, again, with a lot of records these days with the NFL, you kind of have to, it's hard to not throw in the grain of salt that, hey, we are playing an extra game a season. So there is that. He is, as far as average yards per game passing, still a bit lower than some of those Jay Cutler years and, some of the other guys up there. Even Mitch Trubisky one year who got into the top 10 with some of these stats. Caleb's average yards per game so far, still a bit low there, but, still as far as single season passing records for the Bears, he is on pace to, in some categories, break records, if not be top 5, which again, as a second-year quarterback and doing that with very few interceptions is impressive and a very encouraging sign, being that, again, last year was not the rookie year that we would have wanted as Bears fans for Caleb Williams. And again, we just, we want a good team, but we also want to finally see a good quarterback playing for the Bears. It's been, too long / basically never happened, really. At least not to the standards of modern quarterbacking. So, I'm excited for that. This video has gone on way too long. Appreciate you for watching this far. If you have, leave a like rating, hit subscribe so you don't miss out on future content from me, and I will see you in the next video.